you'll have to forgive all the glamour shots at the beginning here of my car here, my cycle cart. It's something I'm very proud of. It's probably one of the best things and coolest things, definitely the prettiest thing I've ever made. So if you don't know what a cycle cart is, you're about to find out. And if you do know what a cycle cart is, I hope you appreciate all the hard work that went into it. But here we go. Here's an episode on cycle carts for Junk Hunter Garage. So what is a cycle cart? Well, the long and short of it is you make it yourself. As far as I know, there's not a whole lot of places you can go to just buy one of these made already, which is kind of the beauty of it. And it's also what sorts people out really fast. So you can buy a used one that someone else made. It's also, actually a pretty popular thing to do because most of the people who enjoy this sport are, let's be honest, on the older side. And as they get older, they time out, and the back, the neck, the knee can't handle getting in and out of these little cars anymore, let alone thrashing around. And on some of the dirt tracks and back roads, we like to rip these things down. So most of them have 17-inch wheels and a 5-horse motor you get from Harbor Freight, the old 212 Predator engine. I'm going to take this thing all apart for you to show you exactly what it is and how I did it. I've gotten a lot of questions over some videos I posted about a year ago that showed some of my build, and then I kind of got so wrapped up in racing it and driving it and having fun with it that I didn't really post anything else. So I was just enjoying it. But now it's time to take her apart, address a few issues, fix a few things, and get it ready for the next event that's coming up here in Seattle, hosted down in the south end of Seattle in the industrial district. It's a pretty cool event. I'll tell you more about that later. I think for a proper cycle cart, it's really key not to phone it in. Otherwise, you're just making a go-kart that's weird in proportions. And proportions are extremely important. Generally, you want to pick a car that you like from the time period, which is pre-war or before about 1950. I know that's after the war, but a lot of the cars from right before the war were the same right after the war because they weren't building a lot of cars during the wars. You find a car that you like, you mess with the proportions. I'm going to actually maybe show some of my build process with the proportions I did for this and how I got about that. But then we like to say if you're doing this right, the car is a caricature of the original car and not a replica of the original car, because these original cars were huge, very big cars. I actually had a chance to park my car next to the actual car I modeled it after, which is this car's modeled after a 1926 Talbot Lago T26C, which I had no idea was at the time. I flipped through a couple old books with my buddy Dave, and he pointed me in that direction, and I would never do it again because it was extremely difficult, but boy, I'm glad that I didn't know any better at the time, because it turned out really well, just diving in head first and figuring it out as I went, and enjoying the process, because really it's a long process and it's a labor of love, because when you finally get it done, you're not going anywhere where you're gonna win a trophy or win a prize money. So you're doing it for the love of the build and for the adventure you have in it. So once again, making use of my handy dandy homemade gantry crane. As you can see, if you've watched any of my videos, I get a lot of use out of this thing because it's a lot easier to work on this sitting up higher than it is to get on the ground. Now, it's not a full-size car. It probably only weighs, I think, something like 230 pounds, but why make life harder than it needs to be? So let me bring you in and kind of show you some of these elements I've worked into this. But it does have rear brakes, no front brakes, so that makes it a lot simpler for as far as plumbing and linkages and things. It does have on this one full front and rear suspension, which is a rarity. And not only front and rear suspension, but the front suspension is A-arm with springs. So I don't know that I've ever seen another cycle cart with this kind of setup. And I'll take this all apart and show you what I did. So let's get into it. So it's really important for me to make this thing as serviceable as possible because it really makes owning a sports car or a race car miserable when you dread working on it. So I tried to incorporate that into the design from the very beginning, just thinking about where I'm putting these seams so that that matches up with a serviceable part. So like, for example, this looks a little different than the original, pretty close and in a lot of ways, but you know, different. So I made sure to put a seam here so that I can build in that when I need to service the front of the car, it's just a quick flip of a latch and I can get this off. So you can see inside of here, this is just not even quarter, eighth of an inch wood. This whole nose section is all foam cord with fiberglass over it and then sanded to shape. Got some dirt on here from the local racetrack. Shout out to Slime Dog. They're the best. They give us the most track time, I think, of anywhere in the world. So if you're in the greater Washington area, you can really take advantage of getting a lot of track time. And we like to call it the crucible of speed because some of the fastest cycle carts in the world, including myself 2 times running and my wife, have honed our craft there and we push each other to the limit. So just a little shout out to those guys. Also, if you look up the Road and Track magazine, they came out and featured about the cycle carts that's where it was shot at. I was out sick that day, unfortunately, so I wasn't in that, but lots of envy for my buddy Ben, who made the cover, so check that out. So yeah, you'll see there's lots of washers in there. I mean, it's not perfect. I'm not a engineer by any means. There's lots of loose tolerances here. Should have painted that for sure. It's rusting up good. Anyways, a lot of the stuff, like I said, I made jigs for so that I could try and get it as square as possible. But the thought process is I looked at the blueprints of the original car and I wanted to try and match it in whatever little ways I could to try and get the feel for the car and maybe even get in the heads of the people who made it and really try and tackle some of the same challenges they did on even the smallest of scales. You notice I don't have a shock absorber on here, and really you don't need one. For the car's light enough weight, and with the driver inside of it, it doesn't ever get squirrely. I've never had a lack of traction in the front. I've never had a lack of, or overly bouncy. So I just mentioned that because a lot of guys really want to overcomplicate things, and I realize that might sound funny, being that this is probably one of the most complicated setups you'll see. But long story short, it could have been even more complicated. Here's a little shot of the pedal cradle. So you'll notice another big difference to this car is it's got pedals like a regular car. We got gas and brake with a hydraulic brake cylinder, and they're both on the same side. A lot of cycle carts you'll see one on one side and one on the other. Again, a lot easier to build them that way, but functionally, everybody's used to driving with your feet like this. And what that allows you to do is have a dead pedal. And you might wonder, what's the point of a dead pedal? I mean, if you've never been racing, you probably never even thought about it. It's just a place to rest your foot when you're driving, right? Well, when you're in one of these little guys and you're throwing this thing around the corner as hard as you can, and your body makes up the same amount of weight roughly as the car does, it makes a lot of difference where your body position is. You can completely change the line you take through a corner or how the car handles by leaning left instead of right, because it's going to give you better traction. Now, it's going to be 100 times easier to do that if you can plant that foot on one side and work your gas and your pedal just like you would in a regular car and squeeze yourself into a good spot where you got leverage, and you need that dead pedal and your one leg to do that. Most of these spindles you get are from go-karts, which work fine, but you're going to end up with a 3/4 inch spindle, or you should anyways, 3/4 or 5/8, whatever you end up using, which is imperial or standard size. But then just about all the wheels you're going to find are going to be Kawasaki or Honda, and so that's going to give you a metric hub. There's a guy on eBay that I go and I buy, or I get these custom spacers made, just these little guys, and that's the difference between the metric and the standard size. You can. So let's finish the walk around here. Let me show you in the cockpit here. Let me get you in here. That goes up and through, and you'll notice the inside of this is, now you might not have been expecting wood, but my mentor Dave, who taught me how to do these, he was a big fan of building model planes. So I learned how to build this very curvy body on here. Headers, you can see they don't even, it's an optical illusion. I figured if you just paint the back of that black, and these are all just sink pipes. And we got a quick connect on the steering wheel we can pop off, and you'll notice these are real gauges. We got an actual speedo, we got a cylinder head temp gauge, and we got a volt gauge. I can tell you, I've been racing for 2 years now, and I have yet to look at any of those gauges once. To me, when I was building this, I thought, I'm building a car, a race car nonetheless. I need to have proper instrumentation. Waste of money. I should have been like everybody else who just made a sticker and slapped it to the dash that looks like it and saved myself 70 bucks instead of buying one of these gauges, because for one, these motors don't have an electrical output, so you got to run it off a battery. So the battery's always dead, and then you say screw it and you drive, and so half the time it doesn't work anyways. And then when you do put a battery in, because I have it just rigged up to a Makita 12 volt, one, you're kind of in a seating position where your head's up here looking over the dash, and it's not very easy. And if you notice where the steering wheel is, you know, it's not really in a position. And most of the time when you're tearing around the track, the only thing you're looking at is at the other cars. You don't really care what the speed is, because you're judging your speed in miles per mile, not miles per hour. So, and then also a must for me was e-brake. So this is cable driven e-brake, and what this does is it just pulls a cable. Let's see if you can see it. I don't know if you can notice the brake pedal actually moving back, because this just goes to the back of the brake pedal and basically just engages the brake pedal for you, which works great when you need to get in and out of the car, because otherwise the car's rolling around, and it's just one of those livability things. This is one of the few real major design compromises I did. The original car didn't have a big air cowl like this, because of course it was front engine drive, but you know, that's how it comes when you're making the caricature versus a replica. We have to sit in the car. You can scale down the car, but you can't scale down the drive. Again, I say race car, but I mean that in the sense that it's designed to replicate a race car, because when there's no trophies and there's no prize monies, I don't think you can technically say you're racing. That's why we all lovingly refer to cycle karting as a gentleman's sport, because we're doing it for the love of it. But the reason why I had to put that side cowl on was to give me room for, as on mine, since it's fully articulating in the rear end and it has rear suspension, the whole engine is attached to the rear drive shaft, and so all of it moves together. So that means this whole engine has to be free to move underneath there, which is already in a very tightly constrained space. So a lot of things to consider, and this is why it makes it kind of hard to fit everything in here, because you want the body to look really good. The last thing you want is big chunks of engine sticking out to ruin all those beautiful body lines, and then you start cutting and chopping. So if you want to have the best of both worlds, you can. I mean, I feel like I've achieved that, but it took twice as much work. So if you want to make your life easier, make sure to pick a simple car to build in the first place, because this, like I said, was a very tricky build. So let me show you what it looks like in here. So you'll have to forgive some ugly welding, but you know, function over fashion. So I had to make this very tight bin, because we race on a dirt track and we had to be able to have a proper filter. Pod filters are just about useless when you just have those foam ones. So I had to get this on there. This is running a Mikuni was a 21. These are the Chinese knockoffs. And I'll show you here, actually. So this, nope, that's not it. This? Yes. So this is a real, from Japan, properly authentic Mikuni VM21. Compared to this Mikuni, you can see there is a drastic size difference. Also, linkage is a lot different, and this just altogether is too much carb. It has, I've tried it on there, and it just, you can't tune it down enough to get this thing to run right. So, in my opinion, it's overcarbureted. There's nothing lost by using them, the carburetor. Another tip I would say, guys, is you'll notice underneath here, underneath here we got an extension. These are actually for lawnmowers, but you put it underneath here and you can drain the oil so much easier. And you're going to want to drain the oil on these after any amount of use over about 15 minutes for the first probably 100 times you run them. And that's just because the engines just don't have an oil filter, and they're brand new, and they break in and they spit a lot of metal flakes. And you're probably going to freak out and think your engine's exploding because so much metal flakes, but that's just everything self-clearancing until it's done. So once it's done self-clearancing, you won't have to change as often. But if you want your engine to last, trust me, I've blown up plenty of these, and that's generally why I wasn't changing the oil enough, and then it just eats itself. But we also got our disc brake in here. You can see is mounted up under there. This is from the brakes I like to use. This is a caliper and a matching master that I bought used off of eBay for I believe a Yamaha R1. And then this is just a standard, I think, I want to say 10-inch disc for a go-kart, and they made up really well. And again, I have a locked rear end. I don't fiddle around with having it keyed, unkeyed. I've never had any lack of steering or complaint with having a locked rear end. And again, I drive this a lot. So now, after all that's been gone through, I'll probably tell you a little bit more about stuff as I pick through it here, but I'm actually going to get into repairing what I need to repair on this. Good. Doesn't move. That's what a blown out wheel bearing on a cycle cart looks like. Another tip for you guys, everything should have a nylock nut. I know it seems like overkill, probably seems like money that doesn't need to be spent, but in the long run, nylock, especially on anything rotating, especially on the wheels, got to have nylocks on these. Most of the time I drill a hole through and I run a pin on it as well, but yeah, I've replaced one by one anywhere where there's not nylock. I've replaced with a nylock, and it's really easy to tell because usually when a nut that's not nylock falls off, that's when I replace it with a nylock nut. So pretty simple. So yeah, you can see this is real floppy. So we're gonna take this off, and we're gonna. Oh. So let me show you. So you can see here. This is that washer I was telling you about. You can see got a little damage on here, but yeah, look at I can count how many bearings are left in there on one hand. So yeah, we'll have to knock this out and put a new one in. But rusty bugger is what I was trying to get out. There wasn't enough hanging into the hole, so I had to weld those little nubs on there without getting it too hot so I didn't melt into the aluminum. I figured while I got this apart, I'll go ahead and rebuild on this stuff. I got a little rusty, so I'm gonna, you know, rebuilding, to quote our buddy Derek. But you know, there's no wrong way. Just happy little sprays. There we go. Nice. There are surprisingly Cycle Kart Tour de Elegances, and there's some pretty nice cars out there. And you know, I like to have a nice car, but I also like not having to take all these apart and having to worry about getting them on tight again. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do this. Alright, so we got our little spacer on, we got our other piece in there, we got to run one of these on each side, by the way, because of the whole metric to standard thing. We'll pop that out. There we go, it's on. So yeah, that's the end of the repair on this. So video's getting a little long, so I think I'm going to leave it there. If you want to see more of anything, of how any of this works, the front suspension, the geometry angles, I could do a whole nother video on that. If anyone's interested in that, feel free to leave it in the comments. I read them all, so let me know what you want to see. Otherwise, I'll probably get back to some regular Junk Hunter episodes where I'm just scrounging around finding some good deals on some cool stuff and talking about that, and then maybe do another video on the other Cycle Kart in a couple months. So let me know what you want to see in preparation for that next video, and I'll make sure that I include it in there. So thanks for watching.